Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. In the not too distant future, my band of brave adventurers may be facing a Grick in our Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and I looked around for a Grick miniature and they seem pretty hard to come by in the UK at least, and I didn't want to spend a huge amount of money on one, so I thought I would make one using this Reaper miniature Chthon as a basis. So this Reaper miniature cost me about £2.90, I think. It's not the best miniature in the world, but it's going to serve a purpose. I'm also going to use a 25mm base, some liquid green stuff, and some regular green stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is the Chthon has got very well-defined scales all over its body, and they're a bit too defined for a Grick. So I'm going to use this green stuff, and I'm just going to try and reduce the scaliness of the miniature. And I should point out, I'm not great with green stuff, but I sort of muddle by. I've been using it for years, and I'm okay, I guess. So the thing with green stuff is it's not green to begin with, it's actually blue and yellow, and you mix it together and eventually it goes green. That's what I'm doing here. I'm mixing it up and then I'm using it to fashion a beak, because Gricks have beaks. So I'm going to use 2 small pieces of green stuff. I'm going to make a rough beak-like shape. What I will do eventually is when the green stuff is dry, I will carve it a little more to make it more beak-like. But this is just to give a rough shape to what I require. So you go. You can see it's roughly sort of like a parrot beak shape. I'm then going to use this piece of green stuff and I'm going to roll it into a very thin sausage. Like so. And then I'm going to stretch that out and leave it to dry. You can see the liquid green stuff all over the Chthon has now dried, and it has taken some of the scaliness out of the miniature. It's still bumpy, it still has a bumpy texture, but it doesn't have really well-defined scales. And now my long strand of green stuff is dry, and I'm going to cut off a small piece from the end. And this is a fiddly bit, because like I say, I'm not great with green stuff and I'm not good at sculpting, and this was the best way I could think to achieve what I'm hoping to achieve. So I have a very sharp craft knife and I'm cutting very, very small slithers of this cylindrical piece of green stuff. And when I have them all cut, I'm going to apply some super glue to the fangs of the Chthon, or whatever they're supposed to be, the tendrils. And then I'm going to use some tweezers and I'm going to apply these small discs of green stuff to create suckers for the tentacles, because I had no hope in heck of actually sculpting them, because I just don't have the talent. I'm just going to apply some on every single tentacle, like so. And I'm going back to liquid green stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that all over the tentacles and the suckers that I've just applied, to try and make them blend in a little more so they don't look so obviously stuck on. I don't want them to look like cylinders that have been stuck over the top of tentacles. I want them to look like a part of the tentacles. And that's what I've ended up with. Next, I have trimmed down my beak, and I'm going to glue that onto the front in the center of those 4 tentacles. And it's still a little big at the moment, but after I've glued it, I do trim it down a little more. It's still quite large and comical at the moment, but I will trim it down some more. But that's basically what we end up with. That is a Chthon turned into a Grick using some very basic methods. I'm going to stick it onto a 25mm base, and then we can look at painting it. So it's been given a base coat of black, and as you can see, I've also trimmed the beak a little more to make it more pointed. I think the beak's still too big. If I was to make this again, I would make a much smaller beak, but this is what I've got, and this is what I'm working with. I'm going to apply Death Guard Green over the whole miniature, and I'm going to use 2 thin coats, just to give it a nice solid base coat, and then I'm going to do a wash of a Chthonian camo shade, and that's just going to bring out those details and that bobbly texture on the body. Pretty standard stuff, really. I'm then switching to Necrotic Flesh, which is an army painter paint, and I'm going to use that on the belly of the beast and the inside of the tentacles where the suckers are. Being very careful not to go over the darker green that I've already painted over everything else. Being very careful to narrow to a taper at the end. And then I'm going to give that Necrotic Flesh a wash of a Chthonian camo shade again, just to try and tie it in with the rest of the miniature a little more, so it doesn't look like such a jarring transition to the brighter green. I'm switching back to Necrotic Flesh for one final thing, and that is to apply just a slight highlight to the suckers so they stand out a little more prominently. And what I'm doing, I'm painting this really quickly, really basically, just to get it done. We're going back to Death Guard Green now, and what we're doing is we're using thinned down Death Guard Green just to go over those tentacles and the raised scaly details again, just to bring out some highlights. We're going to apply a couple of coats over the tentacles, blending it towards the tips. And then that will finish the body. We've given the beak a base coat of Xandri dust, and now I'm going to give it a wash of soft tone. And then we're switching to Reikland Flesh Shade. We're going to apply a wash of Reikland Flesh Shade about halfway down the beak, blending it with the colours beneath, and then a final touch of Agrax Earthshade right on the pointy bits of the beak, again blending it in with what's already been applied. And that is our Grick completely finished. I'm not overly happy with it. I'm happy enough. It's good enough for what I wanted to do. But there we go. I am not a master with green stuff. And this was the best I could do, and I thought you might be interested in seeing how I went about it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you have really liked the video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you don't already do so, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.